Okay, we're to the fifth of the 5 characteristics of commodity money. What we're saying is that absent some king or government that says, no, you can't use that for money, you have to use this thing for money because I say so. Now, if you don't have a king or a government telling people what they must use as their most frequently traded barter item, and barter is simply that I'll trade you a bowl of cherries for 2 peaches, that's simply barter because no one item is considered to be the most frequently traded item called money. And so if we trade anything other than what we call money, then we call that barter. And barter is very, very inefficient. It's very inefficient, and that's why economies don't use barters. I don't care whether it's a government-ordered economy or a free market-ordered economy. They just don't barter because it's too inefficient. But it comes down to the most valuable, the most important of these 5 categories, and that is relative scarcity. Whatever society picks for money, it will be relatively or economically scarce, or it won't work as money. It just simply won't work. Let's say I want to buy a farmer has a mule and or a donkey, and I want to go buy the donkey. And so what I do is I get a wagon here and I just fill it chock full of corn, just a big wagon full of corn, heaped up corn. And I take it over and says, I'd like to buy your donkey. I want to buy it with this wagon load of corn here. Farmer looks at me and goes, come here. Walks over to his barn, opens up the door of his barn, and he's got a barn full of corn. Since he's already got a barn full of corn, do you think he wants to get any more coin in exchange for anything that he has? No, because for him, corn is not scarce. Corn I got. Give me something that I don't have, and I might be willing to trade for that. But unless whatever we're willing to trade is considered to be scarce in the eyes of the seller, he'll want it. Why would I want that? I mean, I got more than I'm up to my ears in corn. Relative scarcity. And that is one of the major things that have been going for commodity monies for a long, long time, is that they're relatively scarce. Now, there's a thing called a regression theorem. Regression theorem that says, well, what was the reason that people traded anything that became money in the first place? At some point in time, it became money. But what was the original reason that people started trading this thing before it became the most commonly traded item? And that regression theorem says that at some point in time, people, for some reason, liked or wanted this commodity for a particular purpose other than its use in trade. Either it was pretty, or it was durable, or you could do something with it, or it helped you acquire something or accomplish some sort of end. But whatever that goal was, it was that attribute of original desire that gave rise to the fact that, yeah, it just happened to have these other characteristics as well, which turned it into money. Now you begin to see that now, when we're talking about our $4 and 4 apples model, that this scarcity of money is a really big deal. If we start increasing the volume of money, that decreases the scarcity of money. And as the scarcity of money decreases and it becomes more and more and more plentiful, pretty soon it becomes more and more worth less, because there's just so much of it out there that people don't want it for anything anymore. So those are the 5 characteristics of commodity money. I want to go into representative money. As we move out of commodity money into representative money. I want to try to take this into an historical context that during the American Revolutionary War and American independence, after we fought our way free from Great Britain and their rule over the colonies here, what do you have to do? How do you go about being a sovereign nation? What makes you a sovereign nation? Well, you got some sort of rules and regulations, some sort of like a constitution. Everything's based on that, and some sort of government structure for elected or king or whatever. Of course, George Washington didn't want to be a king. Could have been, but he didn't want to be a king. And you got to have a military, and then you got to have your own money. Every country has to have their own money. And so at this point, Thomas Jefferson and a fellow named Rittenhouse, I'm not sure what position he held, decided that, you know what, it would be a dumb idea for us to just, by law, say we're going to pick something as money. That never really seemed to work out. What we're going to do is we're going to say, well, what have the colonies been using for the last 50 to 80 years for money? And they've been using a coin, a silver coin, about a one ounce silver coin, that was originally minted in Germany by a guy named Jacobin Thaler. And the merchants liked it because it was about the right size to carry around a lot of purchasing power, but not too much purchasing power, because you don't want to carry around a $10,000 bill. You don't really want to carry around a $1,000 bill, but a $500 bill, yeah, $100 bill, those are about right. And so this would be this one coin called a Thaler, produced by this Jacobin guy, became popular in terms of its size and amount of silver, so other nations began to copy the size of that particular coin. And then they would put their own name on that. And Spain, of course, was a very big player at that point in time. And Spain had colonized Mexico, and they found silver in Mexico, and they set up a mint in Mexico City. And they made a coin the same size as this German Thaler. It was called a Spanish real. What we would know as one of the pieces of 8, and they called it pieces of 8 because you got the coin here, and you have a little mark here, and mark here, mark here, mark here, mark, 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 mark. And they call them pieces of 8 because if you absolutely positively had to make change, this is a pretty valuable coin here, absolutely positively had to, you could get a flat stump someplace and get a sharp axe, put the axe right about here, and give it a good couple whomps, and now you could have half of it because they got the marks already there. Of course, if you split it again, you'd have quarters. If you split it again, you would have 8s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's why they were called pieces of 8. Pieces of 8. I don't know. I haven't been to a high school basketball game for many, many, many years. But I remember there used to be these the cheerleader chants, 2 bits, 4 bits, 6 bits, $1. All for our side, stand up and holler. You don't know anything about that, but it used to be. Where do you ever get this thing called 2 bits? Or in our colloquial language, shaving a haircut, 2 bits. Oh, how much is 2 bits worth? Well, it would be, this is a bit, and this is a bit, and 2 bits would be a quarter. So at one point in time, in American history, a shaving a haircut cost 2 bits, a quarter. And so we had this coin, which was the prominent coin that was being circulated inside the colonies for many, many years, going up into the term of the Revolution. Of course, we have these stories about George Washington, who threw a silver dollar over, what was it, Potomac or something like that? And chopping down a cherry tree and said, I cannot tell a lie. All these stories. Well, we know for sure he didn't throw an American dollar across that Potomac, because when he was a young guy, there was no United States of America. So it couldn't have been an American dollar. So what did he throw over there? He probably threw some form of a thaler. A thaler. And we don't speak the same language as the English do anyway. Our cars don't have bonnets, they have hoods, right? We don't have bonnet. And so we didn't say thaler, we say dollar. So it would be about the same size coin. Whether he actually threw it that far, I don't know. But it was probably one of these Spanish reals. Now, Spain was making these dollars, pieces of 8. You've seen the movies with the parrot on the shoulder going, pieces of 8, pieces of 8. Well, that's kind of where it comes from. Well, they were taking these, Spanish galleons were taking these silver dollars back to Spain from their mines in Mexico, near Mexico City, and there would be some pirates, like Blackbeard the pirate. And he would raid some of those galleons and then have all that silver, but he needs supplies too. He needs gunpowder and saltpeter and dried meat and rope and all that sort of stuff. So he would come in up the coast of North Carolina, South Carolina, all that way, and get supplies. And what would he pay for? He would pay for it with those pieces of 8, and they got into circulation, and they were circulating widely inside the American economy. Of course, there were other, I won't call them pirates, the other people who were raiding those Spanish galleons too. One was Sir Francis Drake. Well, he's a scoundrel or a hero, depends on which version of that you read. But he was Sir Francis Drake, and so the difference between him and Blackbeard the pirate was that Sir Francis Drake was smart enough to share the booty with the Queen. So he gets to be knighted, right? They're still raiding the same Spanish galleons, but you take a big hunk of the proceeds to the Queen, and you don't get real greedy about it, well, then you can be a real law-abiding, patriotic person, rather than a Blackbeard the pirate who wants it all at the same time. So we have these coins coming around inside the United States, and what are we going to have for money now that we are our own separate country? So Thomas Jefferson and this guy named Rittenhouse went out and collected some of these thalers, some of these dollars, American dollars. They took them back to their lab, and they did a density test where you got a beaker full of water, and you put it down here and it displaces the water, and they could tell how much silver is in there. And as I recall from my reading someplace, if I can remember, I better write this down. Yeah, it was this. That the amount of silver that they came up with was 371.25 grains of fine silver. And so they decided, that's what our dollar is going to be. We're going to have a dollar that is, it has exactly the same amount of silver in it as this European Spanish dollar, thaler, pieces of 8. So when people trade in the colonies, you could give me one of these German thalers, you could give me a pieces of 8, or you could give me one of these American minted dollars, and they're all the same thing. And it was a very, very wise decision in terms of economic trade. So this 375.25 by law is what we call lawful money. It's still on the books. It is still lawful money. That's why I kind of had a grin when that grand jury was trying to figure out what kind of money did he pay for with this silver dollar. Did he pay lawful money? Is it real money? Who was right, the IRS or the guy who was reading the coin saying the coin says it's $1, it's made by the United States government, it's got to be $1, I only paid you $1, I only paid him $1. So all he has to declare is $1. He doesn't have to declare $14, right? That was a legal question. Of course, when you're playing games with the IRS like that, they don't really care what the law says. It's whether they think you're being fair or not. And that's As long as they get a jury to agree, then that's the way it is. So this would be a lawful dollar. Now, in my youth, I not only had silver dollars, but I had something called representative money. And the dollars didn't say Federal Reserve note up at the top. They said silver certificate. It said silver certificate. And as a kid, you know, I'm aging here, I got gray hair, etc. I could take this silver certificate and I could take it to a bank, and it said over here, payable to the bearer upon demand, $1 silver dollar. And I know this is truth because I did it. And I would take that silver certificate to the bank, and I'd lay it on the counter, say, I want my silver dollar, please. And that nice lady would give me a silver dollar. Because that's what it says right here. It's a promissory note. Payable to the bearer. I was a bearer. Doesn't matter what your age is. That's called a bearer bond. If you have it, it belongs to you. It's in your possession. Now, you might have taken it from your neighbor over here. You might have taken it out of his dorm room. But the policeman can't take it out of your hand and put it in his hand anymore because it's yours. Now, you still owe him $100, but you don't owe him that $100. Because money is fungible, right? So he can't take it out of the hand and get it over here. He said, you better pay him $100 real quick. You're going to be in real trouble because you owe him one. You don't owe him that piece of paper, but you owe him $100 because money is fungible. Now, this says that when I hand this to a bank, they better hand me a silver dollar or they're in violation of the law. And again, I was collecting silver dollars. And I was in competition with my cousin, who was also collecting silver dollars, and we had this game going, who's going to collect the most pretty silver dollars. Now, this is not a silver dollar. It's a silver certificate. It is a promise to pay the bearer upon demand $1 silver dollar. It represents this commodity over here, this silver coin. That's what it represents. That's why we call it representative money. I remember in college that somebody was running down the hallway of the dorm waving his Playboy magazine, which wasn't all that unusual all by itself. But he was saying, hey guys, the government says right here that you got to turn in your silver certificates. And if you don't turn in by a certain date, they're not going to pay you a silver dollar anymore. This is right here in Playboy magazine. It's where they got most of their news right out of play. And it was true. Play was pretty good credibility, right? And everybody go, oh, let me see that. And then they pull out, oh yeah, it says right here, silver certificate. What does yours say? Oh, yours says Federal Reserve note. Uh-oh. And they would run to the Coke machine. And they would put their Federal Reserve note in there, and they'd get a Coke out. Whew. They'd put their silver certificate in there and get their Coke out. Whew. They both work. I was worried there for a second. As long as they can put the thing in and get their Coke out, they're happy. They don't care whether it's a silver certificate. They don't care what it says. As long as they get the Coke out of the machine, as long as it works as money, that's the only thing they care about. It works as money. If it looks like money, acts like money, quacks like money, walks like money, then it's money. I happened to be telling that to an associate that I was working with at the time, and he was a purchasing manager of a company. And I don't know how the story came up. But anyway, he said, oh yeah, I remember that. He said, I had a bunch of silver certificates, and I sent them in to the government. Would you like to see the silver dollar that the government sent me? And I kind of into that sort of thing. Yeah, I would. Do you happen to have? Yeah, I got it in my drawer here. And he pulled out his drawer, and he had a kind of bigger than this, a clear plastic tube that had a bunch of little shiny BBs in it. And he handed it to me. There's the silver dollar they got me. That's your silver dollar? Yeah, that's the silver dollar. I'm looking at that and looking at it and I go, oh, it's one of those aha moments. Oh, we don't always know what the law is, but usually the government really actually does obey the law. And now whether we know what the law is or not, that's a completely different matter. But the government sent him his silver dollar. And I go, oh, I like that because I know that lawfully a silver dollar is what? 371.25 grains of fine silver. It doesn't have to be in a coin. It has to be that much silver to be a silver dollar, and he got his silver dollar. See what I'm talking about here? About lawful money. We'll get to legal tender in a second. Along the same lines, happened to be in a precious metal refiners, because we would buy precious metal in a particular form to create silver contacts and gold contacts, etc. And I was in this plant tour, and during this plant tour with this silver refinery, were 55-gallon drums, just side by side. And they were as long as that hallway back there. And I still, from a childhood, I remember silver dollars. I like silver dollars. Look over there. Of course, when you go in, you got to put these stuff on. You don't stick your hand in the pocket and all that sort of stuff, because you're not supposed to walk in. You walk through metal detectors anyway. I was a visitor. So you don't pick them up, put in your pocket. And I was looking in that, and the guy says, don't even think about it. No, we're not selling it. But you don't understand. You see, that's an 1883 Carson City, and it's probably in almost uncirculated condition. It's not just worth $14 in silver. I mean, that's a collectible item. Don't even think about it. I know, but that's a government job. What does the government want you to do? We signed on a dotted line that we would melt down every single one of those silver dollars, and we're not going to put anything in jeopardy. I don't care if that's $1 million coin. We're melting it down. Huh. It occurred to me, why does the government want to melt down all those silver dollars? As we'll learn a little bit later, they don't want that silver in circulation. Because if somebody's going to get paid, which kind of money do they want? Do they want the paper dollar, or do you think they'll want the silver dollar if it's there in circulation to be used? Well, now they just destroyed this idea of fungibility, and all of a sudden, according to Gresham's law, people will trade the lesser value dollar and keep the more valuable dollar, and now you've got two different kinds of dollars, and the government doesn't really want it to go that way. So that's what lawful money is. That's what representative money is. Commodity money is the silver dollar. The representative money is a representation of commodity money. We're going to talk about the next category of money, historical category of money, called fiat money, in the next session.